What's up, guys? It's Eventon here. Realize I'm a little bit late to the party on this announcement. CCP Psych actually released this dev blog update, whatever you want to call it, about 4 days ago. It's actually on the 23rd. They put this up on the 19th. I realize I've been a little bit slow on this stuff. Just as of recently, I'm actually moving out at the end of this month of my current place and moving into a new place beginning of next month. So that's why things have been kind of slow. I need to update all my address and all the physical stuff, as well as all the bills I need to pay, and like my debit card and all that kind of stuff. I need all the fun things that you need to update when it comes to that involves moving. But hopefully once that's said, everything's said and done, I can kind of get back on a more regularly scheduled system where I can release videos more frequently. On top of that, the times I have been logging in, we've been pretty busy with some corporation, some like corp ops. So I've actually been recording a lot of that content. I'm excited to bring it to you guys when that's all kind of said and done. Some of the things we've been doing in corp. So regardless, we'll go ahead and jump into this from extraction to production. So this is one of the, so my past, not in my past, but I guess my experience comes from starting EVE Online late 2019. So really all I know is Scarcity for the most part. I think I might have started a bit sooner. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head. But all I know is Scarcity. So everything that I'm kind of hearing about, oh, the Rorqual used to be this and that, it's all pretty much just secondhand information I've heard from corp mates, veteran players, people that hanging out in chats. I've been doing my due diligence hanging out, and like Astaroth's stream, he's done a very good job covering all this information. He uploads all of his stuff from Twitch all the way, uploads it into YouTube. I've been doing a lot of interviews, obviously revolving around this this update. Been doing that. I've been hanging out in some of the Talking in Stations Discords a little bit more frequently, just kind of getting the takes on everyone from like the new bro miner all the way up to like the null sec blocks that are going to be potentially the most affected by these changes. So that's kind of where a lot of my information is secondhand. So based off of that, I'm trying to formulate an opinion on this. So if I do get a couple numbers tweaked, or if I might be wrong on a few things, I'm more than happy to talk about it in the comments. But usually it's just sheer ignorance, and I'm not exactly sure what the deal is. But regardless, so diving into this, the long story short of it is CCP's already made some changes, which I think is amazing. One of the issues that like the EVE Online community's had is that CCP has not been doing a great job communicating and kind of giving lead time for certain things or changes that they're going to be making. So I think this is one of the first times in a while that CCP has done that, and they actually put it up on the test server. They got people to do it, run a bunch of numbers, and CCP has honestly done an amazing job kind of doing these changes in the meantime. So we'll go ahead and jump into it. So compression, long story short, they're just holding that off until 2022. And I think this is perfect because based on the changes or everything that we've done with the exhumers, as well as the barges and the expedition frigates, like all those changes, CCP will have a lot of time to kind of take note and record all the information that is being gathered by basically how much are these ships taking resources, how much do we actually need it to affect the compression, what's kind of the temperature, how about people feeling like, hey, compression, there's now a waste that's associated with it, do we want to keep it, do we want to get rid of it, are people still getting enough resources, whether that's something that we want to keep around. So basically the compression for both gas and moon goo, they're just holding off on it until I think they just need to get more numbers that need to be reevaluated for the most part. Mining efficiency, so this part's really interesting. So they've actually reworded it. It's no longer, I mean, there's still a waste probability, but there's no longer like kind of a waste thing. They call it mining efficiency, which I think is better, definitely better wording for it. So they've changed it before. So prior, what it was every single module, I should say, mining, strip miner, whatever it was, had a guaranteed chance to basically have ore that just went poof in space. So if you use a Tech 1 strip miner, had a 100% chance probability of wasting ore, and as you stripped it, there was a 100% chance that if you got 100 meters cubed of Veldspar, also 100 meters cubed of Veldspar in that rock would also disappear with it. So they've kind of flipped the script and said, hey, the higher yield you have, the more wasteful you are. So instead of basically having a guaranteed chance of something going away, now they've kind of flipped it that now it's chance based. So using a lower module like the Tech 1 drones, as well as like the Tech 1 strip miners, there's no chance of waste, but you're also just mining it just slower. So basically by using a strip miner, or in this case like excavator drones or augmented drones, you're definitely mining faster just because the raw yield is higher, but at that time you're also being more wasteful just because the tools that you're using are more powerful, they're much more wasteful. So I think that kind of makes sense as well. So they're still doubling all the resources. So this way, I think this is a good way to basically not punish new bros. So we'll still take still take new bros on in these huge mining corps or null blocks, whatever it is. And that way also new bros don't realize that they're also being kind of wasteful at the same time, but they're not actually doing waste. They're just yield is much lower. So and this was also kind of some play around with the crystals as well. So we'll go ahead and get down to here. But I think this part was a very good move by CCP, though it's a give and take, right? Because before there was a guaranteed chance that you could be wasteful, and by using higher modules, especially some like the ore modules and like the faction modules, you could just get rid of the waste probability altogether. Now that it's just chance based. So now when you use a Tech 2 module, every time you cycle, there's just a 34% chance you could potentially also waste an equal amount of that ore. So it's a give and take there, but I think with the way the crystals are set up and some of these other things, it's going to be up to the person to determine how they want to mine. So the mining crystals, still not entirely sure how this works exactly. So it says the waste probability bonus is additive. So to my knowledge, if you use a type A crystal on any of these, it's not going to really affect anything. It's not going to affect your waste probability at all. But if you use a type B, which has higher yield, but it's also more wasteful, that 20% gets added to whatever this is. So if you use a Tech 2 strip miner with a type B crystal, there's now a 64% chance that you will have some waste, and you'll waste that equivalent of whatever you mined at the same time. And type C obviously has the highest waste probability, pretty much as high as possible. So if you put it on that, now it gets up to 74%. So now you have a very high chance of wasting a lot. So the mining amount bonus. So I'm not going to read all this off here. I'll also put a link down in the description below to like this forum post, even though it is 5 days old of the making of this video. So I do think that the Tech 1 and the Tech 2 crystals are both a good move. Just the way that they've changed this, as well as the crystals, I think in my opinion are a good move. The Rorqual changes as we transition from the Rorqual from the absolute best solo mining ship to a more supportive role, offering panic, storing of ships, rapport, yada yada yada. And I think this is very good. I said CCP, I kind of mentioned a few different times, I think CCP should stick to their guns on what they're going to do, which in my mind, what that really meant was just stick to their guns and like don't give the Rorqual major buffs to make it on par to, you know, like 2 hulks or anything crazy like that, because basically it sounds like as they were before, like pre-nerf, or I should say pre-scarcity, what was going on is that each excavator drone was almost the equivalent of a hulk, maybe somewhere between a hulk and like a coveter. I'm not exactly sure, but that's kind of what I've heard, and that is just way too hot. I think a lot of even some of the null-sec industrialists kind of agreed, like honestly that level of mining efficiency and just that raw power that that Oracle could have before, and just also how long it went on for, honestly should have never happened. And I think CCP realized this, which is why they kind of introduced the scarcity. They just added kind of different ways that they can kind of cut away at the resources, as well as just like the raw mining yield and all that stuff when it comes. So scarcity doesn't mean that this is over and now we're going to go back to the way it was. Now it's like, now people can actually go back to mining normally, because occasionally I'll pay attention to the monthly economic report, and there's kind of like that sliding scale where this is the sweet spot, this is too high, this is too low. Now we're at the point where it's a bit too low, and now it's going to get back up to where it needs to be. So regardless, I'm not going to spend too much time on like these very granular stuff, because again, I don't really fly the Rorqual, but at the same time, I probably will focus more on like the Orca, the barges, and the exhumers as well. But it does seem like overall the drone maximum velocity bonus is getting increased. As of right now, this is getting nerfed. I think this is what's happening currently. They're not comparing it. I think these graphs aren't comparing it to what was the first iteration that they made. They're just saying, hey, these are just the new ones. Drone mining yield bonus 500. Now it's going down to 300, which is fine. There's some more graphs down here that I did see that seem to explain it a bit better. Now we're going to head down to the Orca. And from what I've heard, the Orca, as long as you have the Tech 2 version of the Compact Industrial Core, which also is another thing I heard, they're going to rename the Compact Industrial Core, because Astrothy mentioned it. I don't think it's a good idea to call it Compact Industrial Core. They'll have to come up with a different name for it. CCP did say a lot of these things are still just name placeholders for now until they come up with something new. That probably includes the crystals as well as this new Compact Industrial Core as well. So, but from what I've heard, when they come out with this Tech 2 version of the Industrial Core for the Orca, you're actually going to have the same mining yield as you did pre-scarcity or pre this update or whatever it is. So the Orcas actually aren't losing any yield. but you will have to pay, I believe it's heavy water or whatever it is, in order to kind of keep that going. So there's going to be a small cost associated with it, but orcas aren't going to be completely dead when it comes to high sec mining. They're just going to be very immobile when it comes to obviously dealing with ganks or trying to get on and off grid, but they're going to be much more efficient when it comes to boosting their fleets. And like just the other barges in general are just going to be able to mine so much more now than the orca. I think those people that do multi-box orcas, like you're just better off just using covetors or retrievers, whatever the alternative is. Mining frigates and porpoises. Not really going to cover that too much, but the covetor. So one thing they did say was overall that they want to make a meaningful choice between survivability, yield, and ore hold. So this is barges and exhumers. However, we understand that some of these changes are not survivable enough. Still, I still think it's ridiculous that you could still have a catalyst that can completely just wipe the floor with a barge. Even in a 0.5 system, like I feel like that should still exist, but only in a 0.5 if someone is using a Tech 2 catalyst and they're going up against a very poorly fitted covetor in a 0.5. Okay, so that way solo ganking isn't completely dead, but you need to have basically all three of those variables perfectly lined up. T2 catalyst, 0.5 system, poorly fit covetor, then okay, I think that's fine. But everything else, I do think a lot of these ships should be able to, at the very least, survive 2 or 3 catalysts when they're attacking. But it definitely seems like they're increasing the tank on a lot of these ships, which is another thing I noticed prior, which was CCP was doing a very weird thing where they were trying to make like the shield, the armor, and the structure HP like all equivalent. So they were kind of like omni-tanked in the way of like shield, armor, and structure, which is a bit weird because the whole goal is to kind of pair them up with an Orca or Rorqual, and these things are giving out better shield bonuses. So I figured like we would want to give them more shield rather than structure HP, which I think this update is doing. But as you can see here with the covetor, like they're getting a massive structure boost down here. I mean, that's getting doubled. This is getting nearly doubled, and this is getting nearly doubled. This is getting more than doubled, I should say, or no, nearly doubled because that's only 2,000. And they increased the power grid by over double, given an extra mid slot. The agility, I believe that means it's going slower, so it's going to take you longer to enter warp if that number is going up, because as the number is lower, you get to align and go a bit quicker. Increased gas hold, like that's completely fine. Mining barge skill, strip duration, gas harvesting duration, that's all new stuff. That doesn't really seem to have really changed too much. Gas harvester duration, 30% less. Okay. I think that's something that they've already had, what they had prior. So the retriever, this is an interesting one. Another thing they did was kind of affect their mass, which I don't think is a big deal, only if you're probably dealing with wormholes. But other than that, it's not going to affect you guys too much. But again, it increased to the CPU. They're giving a much bigger bonus to the power grid, I believe, now than they were before. So this is good because now you can actually fit things like prop mods. Even though like shield extenders do take up a lot of CPU, they're also pretty power grid dependent as well. So that is good to see, because the main reason why you couldn't really fit a lot of the shield upgrades, I should say, or like the shield extenders, is because the power grid was getting eaten up by the mining upgrades as well, which I think is another thing CCP could also look at, is potentially balancing the mining upgrade modules, that the ones that are fit in the low slots, as well as like maybe even some of the mining rigs for drones, as well as like the mining yield for the drone, like mining drones themselves. So I think there's a lot of numbers that are being tweaked here, but I think some of the numbers could also be tweaked in the mining drones themselves, as well as the like mining upgrades if they're trying to affect the yield here. But I guess that'd be twisting too many knobs at the same time. Regardless, the agility is being nerfed on the retriever. So again, I think this just kind of goes with CCP's whole line of highest yield ship in the game, lowest tank, highest yield, slowest align, all that stuff. We want to get these ships out in the belt so they're more likely to die. Just have a good kind of like risk versus reward gameplay here. The retriever is kind of like the good middle ground. It has a massive ore hold that's getting buffed as well. They're getting more tank. Their shield capacity is almost getting doubled. This is almost getting doubled. That is getting doubled. And they're also giving all of the barges 50 megabit drone bandwidth, so they can actually use a single ice mining a drone, I should say, if they really wanted to. Or they could use 5 mediums, which I think is pretty cool in my opinion. And other than that, not much has really changed, like targeting range, like whatever. Shrimp miter yield duration. That was another thing I thought that was really strange about the retrievers, that they had like no roll bonus compared to the other barges. It's nice to see them that they are getting a small buff to mining yield. It's not as good as the retriever, or I should say the coveter, obviously, but it's still there. Procure. Now this is one that's kind of near and dear to me. This is one that I've always used for mining, just because they've always kind of fended off gankers. Even when I was mining in a 0.5 system, you know, you could really stack up those mid slots. The one thing I'm not a huge fan of is that CCP's really try to just homogenize all these ships to make them the exact same. They all have 2 mid slots, 3 lows, 2 highs, 3 rig slots. I do think the slot layout, just in general, is one of the things that did make the like Procure more different than some of the other ones, because it just didn't have the yield, but it did have the tank and it did have different things. So in my personal opinion, I would love to see at the very least the Procure get 3 mid slots and 2 lows. Like, I just don't know what the Procure would do with an extra low slot. It has no ability to actually mine. As you can see, the roll bonuses are just strictly just for damage. The mining barge skill, the gas harvesting duration is extremely minimal. So I'm just not sure what you would do with those 2 mid slots anyway. Like, you're usually taking the Procure for its tank, but you're nerfing its mids, and you're giving it extra lows, which most of the time, I mean, I'm using a damage control as well as a mining upgrade anyway, but now you can use 2 mining upgrades and a damage control. Not exactly sure how that would work out, considering we're not getting extra CPU, but we're missing 2 mids. I don't know. Like, this definitely seems like more of like, and I mentioned it before, like a Watchdog style kind of gameplay where CCP wants these people to basically have some sort of combat capability, but that's really hard to do when you only have 2 mids. And how much damage are you going to really be doing if the only mids you could do are basically what, a prop mod and a scram if you really wanted a PvP? And at that point, you have no shield extenders, no multi-specs, no web, nothing to really help you actually like hold that target down and kill them and actually punish them for showing up in your fleet. The extra lows, I guess you would just double bulkhead, damage control. That's pretty much it. So I'm not exactly sure what they're trying to do with the Procure. I think they've made it abundantly clear that it's not going to be the yield ship. It's going to be doing drone damage, which is completely fine. But as it is now, I do think this is a massive buff to them, which is the fact that they could just use medium drones now with that 50% upgrade. That's really nice. So it's a give and take. Like, I realize their offensive potential has been buffed. Their defense has been buffed a tiny bit. They're getting a tiny bit more structure HP, but I really think that's not offsetting the fact that they're just straight up losing 2 mids, which, I don't know. It really depends. I guess it depends on if you were using these mids before strictly for, because I've seen people also fit it out with just, they do a scram, a web, a micro warp drive, and sometimes they even put a disruptor on that, just like hold them from far away as they get closer, or maybe a second web, whatever it is, as well. But regardless, I really think the Procure, one of the things that did make it unique is the fact that it did have a unique slot layout, and it had enough power grid and CPU to actually sport those mid slots. But like, giving it extra power grid in the lows, I'm just not sure what else you're going to be able to do with that. So I'd love to see the mid slots go to 3, low slots go to 2, still have it be unique and really make use of those those drone bonuses, which I guess the extra low slot you could use 2 drone damage amplifiers as well as a damage control. But I don't know. I feel like Procure, usually you weren't running drone damage amps. Usually you're running bulkheads when you're doing PvP. Anyway, moving on. I know we've been going on for, gosh, 20 minutes now. Hulk. Looking at the Hulk now, velocity's been buffed. All these numbers here. Yeah, a lot of numbers here. It doesn't sound like these have been changed too much. I mainly wanted to focus on the tank because they have pretty much doubled the tank on all the ships. So the EHP of all the ships have gone much higher, which I think is a very good change. I do think even with the EHP that something like the Coveter has, which is going to be by far the weakest like mining ship, like the mining barge, like in the game, like EHP wise, I think this thing can still die to 2 catalysts. If you're in a 0.6 and there's 2 catalysts, I think you're still able to die. It's really hard to crunch the numbers just looking at it like this as is, but I think you're still able to die. But it looks like the Mackinaw its armor HP is getting more than doubled, structure HP is getting more than doubled, and its shield HP is going up. So that's another thing I thought that was a bit weird. Is not sure why CCP is kind of like buffing up their armor so much when they're technically shield tank ships, and they're going to be getting most of their boosts for shields when it comes to the Orca. If there's going to be any kind of like defensive shield boosting going on there at all whatsoever. Skiff, again, not a huge fan of this homogenization, because I believe the Mackinaw as well as the Hulk, they already have 4 mid slots. I honestly don't remember. Yeah, they have 4 mids right here, as it says there. So again, I'm not a huge fan of nerfing the mid slots of the Skiff and the Procurer. Okay, so going from 5 to 4 here, I don't think is a huge deal. I actually think that's fine, but they're also nerfing its power grid, or its CPU, but buffing its power grid. So I'm just not exactly sure what these power grid buffs are for. I'm not sure if they're actually expecting the Skiff as well as the Procurer to start maybe going more armor tank with those low slots and not making use of those mids as much. I'm kind of confused why some of these changes are actually happening. And as you can see here, like, I mean, just across the board, like, it's pretty much omni tank. What is all this? Did not mean to click any of that. It's pretty much omni tanked. It's like 6.56, 6.5 thousand HP pretty much across the board. So it's like you can kind of tank it 3 different ways, which I guess is kind of cool. But again, not entirely sure, because if you use bulkheads, that's going to take up more CPU than anything rather than power grid. And again, the drone damage bonus and those very, very measly yield bonuses, which I think the yield bonuses are fine. Just leave those as is. I would just like to see more capability in the mid slots, and a little confused about that CPU nerf. Not exactly sure what that's for, what that entails for the most part. So as we scroll down, I think there's anything else. Yeah, this is all the mining changes. So old Rourke, extremely high, literally double mining a Hulk, which was definitely overkill for the most part. Modulated strip miners with type A crystals. So this shows all the yields for the most part. Hulk should be definitely over the Rorqual if you're using modulated strip miners too with type B crystals. I definitely think obviously that should be higher than the Rorqual, which is good. Mackinaw is not too far behind. Skiff is very low. I would imagine the Skiff would be much lower than that. Like, I think, I'm not sure how relative these graphs really are, because it just says 100 or 10. It just says 10, 20, 30, 40. Like, I'm not sure if that entails the actual not exactly sure what that number entails, because I'm not sure if all these numbers are technically linear for the most part. They're also revisiting the idea of actually removing basic minerals from R4 moon ores is under evaluation. So there's the small chance you won't be getting some of those minerals from R4 moon goo. If they did remove it, I would like to see a very, very slight or subtle buff, maybe to getting a little bit more moon ore, if they are going to be removing those basic minerals, because I will admit I used to mine a lot of R4 moon ore, or R4 just moon goo just in general, and I always have like stockpiles and stockpiles of this like basic minerals, and that stuff is pretty hard to take in and out of a wormhole. I usually make use of it when I do reactions, but I've been kind of lazy with that more recently, to be honest. But no changes for the original plan except for R4 moon resource distribution under evaluation. Blueprints, no change from the original plan. Mining modules and drones. There's all these changes here. I'm not going to go too in depth with this. This video is already pretty long, 25 minutes long for the most part, but I'm going to link it down in the comments below. I would highly suggest you guys check this out. Put your comments down there. I mean, there's still comments happening even an hour ago, even though it's uploaded 5 days ago. People are still talking about it 4 or 5 days ago. People are still talking about it today, and CCP really needs your guys' feedback. So I will say this: if you guys go through this and you guys do have feedback, you know, make sure it's like good constructive criticism, because this is one of the few times it seems like CCP has actually gone out of the way to release an update early, make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted and all that stuff. And I think the last thing we need to do is basically like verbally suplex or choke slam CCP, like, oh my god, all these changes are just so out of touch with the player base, and Rorquals are this and that. Like, you know, just give them the feedback, kind of tell them what you need. Like, that's kind of like, I'm pretty happy with the updates pretty much across the board. The only thing that I would change, which actually they did, and I'm not sure if they covered it, which was they did give the the Venture, as well as all the expedition frigates and all those ships, back their gas mining boost or bonus. So the Venture's keeping its 100%. Same thing with the Prospect, which is very, very good. So they are keeping those. So I'm really glad they kept those changes. And so they listen. That's great. Probably my only feedback is I really wish they kind of didn't hyper homogenize all the barges. So they all have, 2 highs, 2 mids, and 3 lows. I really wish the Prospect, or sorry, the Procurer could kind of keep its at least 3 mids. Like 4 mids might have been a little overkill, and they were some of the best like EHP per like ships you could possibly get. But at the same time, its capacity is pretty limited, and I think maybe the fact that they can use medium drones, like I'm not sure how much that offsets the fact, but that's just my personal opinion. But if you guys are giving feedback, make sure it's constructive. It doesn't necessarily have to be positive, but make sure you're actually kind of giving a solution or things that you would like to see changed in the game. And I fully support all the stuff that CCP is doing, and they're actually listening to people. They're making very, very swift changes and trying to make a lot of their communication and the things that they want to do pretty crystal clear. And if you do have questions, I'm sure if you just ask in here, people will be more than likely to help you. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That is my 26-minute tangent on all this stuff. Hope you guys take care and you fly safe.